The sunsets in Scottsdale were always something special. The sun would sink slowly behind the Camelback Mountains, painting the desert sky in brilliant shades of orange and red. I've been watching this display from the patio of my house for 32 years. Every day, as long as the weather and my work allowed, I'd sit in my usual chair with a glass of bourbon and watch the day bleed out over the horizon. Today, this ritual felt particularly significant. My name is John Miller. I'm 67 years old, and for the last 30 of those years, I've poured my life into building Miller Construction. It started with a single beat-up pickup truck and a crazy dream. Now, I have a fleet of heavy machinery, several major project sites, and a payroll of 123 people. We build all over the Southwest, from Phoenix to Denver. In this line of work, I know every highway, every back road, every job site. This morning, before heading to a meeting with my site foreman, I noticed a spot of blood on my shirt collar. At first, I figured I'd nicked myself shaving, but it was too much for that, and it felt like it had come from deep inside. I quietly wiped it away, changed into a fresh shirt, and drove to the office as if nothing was wrong. But it wasn't the first time this had happened in the last month. After a final sip of bourbon, I went back inside. On the wall hung a portrait of Sarah, my late wife. She died 15 years ago from a brain aneurysm, suddenly and without any warning. We had breakfast together that morning, and by evening, I came back to a house that felt hollow and empty. Sometimes I think a part of me died with her that day. After Sarah was gone, my son and I never really found our footing. Michael was always closer to his mother. She understood his artistic side, his appreciation for things I didn't have time for. I only saw him as the successor to the business I'd spent my life creating. I pushed him to study business, to learn from my hard-won experience. He fought me on it. We argued constantly. In the end, he chose a career in investment banking, something I considered a soft job, not work for a real man. Now he works for some big firm in Chicago, wears $3,000 suits, and looks at me like I'm a fossil from a bygone era. My phone buzzed. It was my assistant. "Mr. Miller, just a reminder about your doctor's appointment tomorrow." "I remember, Linda, 10 o'clock. Should I clear your schedule for the rest of the day?" "Yes, please do. And Linda, don't mention to anyone where I'm going." "Of course, Mr. Miller." I ended the call and stared at the wall, where a timeline of the company's growth was displayed in photographs. The first pickup truck, an old Chevy I'd bought with my savings and a small bank loan. The first office, a room no bigger than a closet. The first crew, just 2 guys who took a chance on me. The first big contract, a warehouse on the edge of town that I'd bid on with more guts than sense. And then, a photo from the groundbreaking of our latest high-rise project. In it, I'm standing beside Michael and his wife, Jessica. We're all smiling for the cameras, fake smiles. Jessica came into our lives 7 years ago, a tall brunette with a perfect smile and calculating eyes, an art gallery curator. She sold Michael a painting for his first condo, and then, it seems, she sold herself to him. I never voiced my opinion of his choice. He wouldn't have listened, but something about her always set me on edge. Maybe it was how her eyes would glaze over when I talked about the business, her attention drifting to her phone the second Michael looked away, or the way she'd scan the house during every visit, as if she were appraising its contents. I poured another bourbon and settled back into my chair. Tomorrow I would find out why I'd been coughing up blood for the past few weeks. Dr. Evans had been my physician for 20 years. He knew me, my history, and my general avoidance of medical offices. When I walked in, he knew it had to be serious. "John, what's going on?" "Blood, David, when I cough, and sometimes for no reason at all." He examined me, then immediately sent me for a battery of tests and a CT scan. 3 hours later, he had the results, and the look on his face told me everything. "It's pancreatic cancer, John. Stage 4. It's already spread to your liver and lungs." "How long?" 6 months, maybe 8 if we try aggressive therapy." I stared out his office window. In the parking lot below, a woman was struggling to fit an oversized SUV into a compact space. It looked absurd and futile, like so many things in life. What are my options? We can start chemotherapy. There are some experimental trials. And the chances? Minimal. Not with stage 4 and metastases this widespread. I nodded. We both understood what that meant. Thanks for being straight with me, David. Are you going to tell your family? Why? Michael doesn't care. He visits 3 times a year, Thanksgiving, Christmas, and my birthday. And each time, he's itching to leave before he even sits down. What about the company, your people? They'll be fine. Chris is a capable COO. David shook his head. John, you can't just... I can, David. It's my life. And it'll be my death. When I left the clinic, I didn't drive home. I went to the office, a modern glass building on the outskirts of Scottsdale. The security guard waved me through, and the elevator whisked me to the top floor. My assistant, Linda, gave me a questioning look, but I just shook my head. I closed the door to my office and walked to the window. The main yard was buzzing with activity below. Dozens of construction vehicles with the Miller logo moving earth and materials. Drivers, operators, laborers. Everyone knew their role. The machine I had built over decades was running like a well-oiled engine. I had created something real, something lasting, and now I was facing the reality that I would soon be gone. I sat at my desk and opened my laptop. An email from Robert Vance, the CEO of Vanguard Holdings, was waiting in my inbox. They had tried to buy my company twice before, and both times I'd turned them down. Now, things were different. I replied to his email and set up a meeting for the next day. When I got home that evening, Michael's black BMW was parked in the driveway. This was unexpected. Christmas was 2 months away, my birthday 4. They were in the living room, Michael in one of his impeccable suits, and Jessica in a dress that likely cost more than my lead foreman makes in a month. They stood when they saw me, their smiles forced. Dad! Michael came over and gave me a stiff, awkward hug. We were in the area and thought we'd drop by. Jessica offered her signature smile, bright and empty. John, you look exhausted. Long day? Just another day at the office. I went to the bar and poured a bourbon. Can I get you two anything? No thanks, Michael said quickly. We can't stay long. I sank into my armchair and studied them. So, what's the occasion for this surprise visit? Do we need a reason to see my own father? Michael asked, feigning hurt. Usually, Jessica placed a hand on her husband's arm. We're just worried about you, John. Michael says you've been pushing yourself so hard, the company can't run on its own. That's what we wanted to talk about, Michael added, stepping forward. Dad, you're 67. Maybe it's time to think about, stepping back? So that was it. I took a sip of my bourbon. And hand the reins to who? Well, there are professional managers, or you could sell. I smirked. And who do you suggest I sell to? Vanguard Holdings made an offer. Twice. Are you keeping tabs on my business? I'm in the financial world, Dad. Word gets around. Jessica smiled again. John, we just want you to be able to enjoy your retirement. Travel, relax. Do I look like a man who knows how to relax? No, Michael sighed. You look like a man who's going to work himself into an early grave. If only he knew how right he was. I'll think about what you said. You will? He sounded genuinely surprised. Yes. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm tired. As you pointed out, I've been working hard. They got up, exchanging a look I couldn't quite decipher. Of course, Dad, we'll stop by this weekend. We can bring lunch. Don't trouble yourselves. It's no trouble, Jessica said with that same feigned concern. We're family. After they left, I stared at the front door for a long time. Family. The word felt like a joke. For 15 years, Michael could barely be bothered to call, and now, suddenly, this overwhelming concern. Something told me it had nothing to do with my health. I took another sip of bourbon and glanced at Sarah's portrait. What would you do, honey? The photo was silent, but I knew what she'd say. Sarah was always a pragmatist. She'd tell me to do what was right for me, not for them. I decided then that I wouldn't tell them about my diagnosis. There was no point in inviting their fake sympathy. For the first time in years, I was almost glad our relationship was so strained. They hadn't noticed any change in me because they never paid close enough attention. Tomorrow, I would meet with Robert Vance and start the process of selling the company. But Michael and Jessica wouldn't know a thing about it. Not yet. I finished my bourbon and headed upstairs. I needed to be well rested. A difficult road lay ahead, and I was determined to walk it on my own terms. The Vanguard Holdings office was in a gleaming skyscraper in downtown Phoenix. I parked my Lincoln in the underground garage and took the elevator to the 37th floor. A receptionist with perfect posture led me to a conference room with a panoramic view of the city. Robert Vance was waiting. He was a tall man in his 50s with salt and pepper hair and sharp, intelligent eyes. Two others were with him, Paul Carter, his CFO, and Laura Diaz, the company's lawyer. "John," Robert stood and shook my hand firmly. "I have to admit, I was surprised to get your call. After our last conversation, I was convinced you'd never sell." "Circumstances change," I said, taking a seat across from him. "May I ask what changed?" Paul Carter inquired, adjusting his glasses. I had no intention of telling them about my illness. It would weaken my negotiating position. "I decided it's time to retire. 67 is old enough to start thinking about other priorities." Robert smiled. "And what are those priorities, if you don't mind me asking?" "I haven't decided. Maybe some traveling." "A wonderful idea," Laura nodded. "We all work too much." "So," Robert began, folding his hands on the table, "our last offer was $7 million. Considering the market and your company's current standing, we believe that's still a fair valuation." I let out a small laugh. "In the last 2 years, we've expanded our equipment fleet, opened a new operations hub in Tucson, and secured 3 major contracts with tech firms. $7 million was the price back then. Today, I'm thinking of a number closer to 11. Paul whistled softly. "That's ambitious." "It's realistic," I countered. "We can bring in an independent appraiser if you'd like." Robert and Paul exchanged a look. "Let's not get ahead of ourselves," Robert said smoothly. "We've run our own numbers. Laura, would you?" The lawyer opened a binder and passed me several pages of figures and charts. They had valued my equipment, my properties, my contracts, and my client list. According to their math, the fair value was $8.5 million. "Does this appraisal account for all assets?" I asked, scanning the documents. "Everything," Paul confirmed. "We didn't even factor in the outstanding loan on the Tucson property." I knew they were lowballing the value of the real estate, but I didn't have the time or the energy for a protracted negotiation. 6 months to live wasn't a timeline that allowed for haggling. $9 million, I said, my voice firm. "That's my final offer." $8,700,000, Robert countered. "9, I repeated, "and I want the deal closed within a week." "A week?" Laura looked shocked. "These things usually take months." "You already have most of the necessary paperwork. I'll provide the rest within 48 hours. Robert studied me, his eyes narrowed. "Is something wrong, John? What's the rush?" "I'm not in a rush. I just don't see the point in dragging it out." After a long pause, Robert nodded. "All right. $9 million, but on one condition. You stay on as a consultant for 3 months to ensure a smooth transition." 3 months was half the time I had left, but I had no other choice. "Agreed, but I have a condition of my own. No one outside this room is to know about the sale until it's officially announced, especially not my son." Robert raised an eyebrow. "An unusual request, but we can honor it. When do you plan to make the announcement?" "After the integration is complete, in 2 or 3 months." "Done." We shook hands, and Laura began drawing up the preliminary agreement. I gazed out the massive window at the city sprawling below. Michael's office was down there somewhere. I wondered what he would say when he found out I'd sold the company from under him. He'd probably accuse me of not consulting him, of not offering him a chance to take over, as if he'd ever shown the slightest interest. 2 hours later, I left the building with a binder of my own. Now I just had to set up an account for the money and make sure Michael could never touch it after I was gone. I visited 3 different banks the next day before choosing Desert Ridge Bank. The branch was far from my home and office, minimizing the chance of running into anyone I knew. I opened an account in my name, but with an added layer of security. Mr. Miller, the bank manager, a man in his 40s with a neatly trimmed beard, explained quietly, "This account will be completely confidential. No one but you can access it without a specific security code. And if something happens to me, then the individual you designate will be able to access it, but only with your death certificate and after passing additional identity verification." That gave me pause. Who could I possibly trust with that code? Michael was out of the question. I didn't have any close friends. Work had consumed my life. Linda, maybe. My assistant had been with me for 25 years, but we weren't close in that way. "I'll have to think about it," I told the manager. "For now, I'll be the only one with access." As I left the bank, a text from Michael came through. "Dad, Jessica, and I want to come by tonight. We need to talk about something important." Again? 2 visits in 1 week was more than I'd had in the last 6 months combined. I replied with a simple okay and drove to the office. Everything was business as usual. No one suspected they'd have a new owner in a week. Linda brought me coffee and my daily schedule. "Mr. Miller, how did your doctor's appointment go? Is everything all right?" "Everything's fine, Linda. Just a routine checkup." She smiled, relieved. After 25 years, she could read my moods like a book. "Chris is waiting in the conference room. He has the third quarter report." Chris Turner had been my COO for 7 years. He was young and ambitious, but had a solid head for the business. If I'd had more time, I might have considered selling the company to him, but he wouldn't have been able to raise the capital this quickly. The meeting was standard. The numbers looked good. Profits were up 12% from the previous year. Chris presented some new ideas for optimizing project timelines and reducing material costs. "Good work," I said, closing the report. "Keep it up." "Thank you, Mr. Miller." Chris looked pleased. "By the way, I'm hearing rumors that Vanguard Holdings is sniffing around again." I tensed. "Where did you hear that?" "It's all over the industry forums. They're supposedly pulling data on our assets." "Don't pay any attention to it. It's just market chatter." Chris nodded, but I saw a flicker of concern in his eyes. "You're not thinking of selling, are you? We're just getting started on the new growth strategy." "No," I lied. "No sale." I went back to my office and sat down. On my computer, I pulled up a file detailing the company's assets. Equipment value, $3,200,000. Real estate, $4,800,000. Contracts and goodwill, roughly $2,000. It all added up to about $10 million. After debts and taxes, $9 million was a fair price. I probably could have pushed for more, but what was the point? $9 million. A sum that could have changed my life, if I had more of it left to live. The trips I'd mentioned to Robert, a luxury condo somewhere on the coast, all the things I'd put off while I was building the business. But the priority now wasn't spending the money. It was protecting it from Michael and Jessica. I wasn't going to leave them a single cent, not after years of neglect, and certainly not after this sudden, transparently false concern that appeared the moment they smelled a potential sale. I opened a new browser tab and started researching trusts and wills. I needed a way to direct the money toward something meaningful. A scholarship fund for kids from poor backgrounds, maybe. Or seed money for startups in the construction industry. Something that would leave a positive mark after I was gone. That evening, I got home early to prepare for Michael and Jessica's visit. The refrigerator was nearly bare. I rarely cooked for myself anymore. I usually grabbed lunch at a diner near the office and made do with whatever was on hand for dinner. Tonight, I ordered from a local steakhouse, a couple of ribeyes and a bottle of good Cabernet. Not that I intended to enjoy a meal with them, but I had to maintain the illusion of normalcy. They arrived at 7 o'clock sharp. Jessica was dressed more conservatively this time, in a dark blue dress with minimal jewelry. Michael looked more serious than usual. "Dad," he said, shaking my hand instead of hugging me. "Thanks for seeing us." "This is your home, Michael. You can come over whenever you want." We moved into the living room. I offered them wine, but they both refused. "We need to talk to you about something serious," Michael began. "I know you've always been fiercely independent, but—" "We're worried about your health, John," Jessica cut in. "You look exhausted, and Michael mentioned you've been canceling meetings at the office." "You have spies in my company now?" I shot a look at my son. No, Dad, it's just people talk. You're a big name in this town. I'm fine. Are you? Jessica leaned forward. Then why were you at a clinic last Tuesday? I froze. How could they know? Were you following me? We just happened to see you, Michael said with a shrug. A friend of mine had an appointment there and saw you in the waiting room. A lie. I knew it was a lie. That clinic was 30 miles from his office. Just a routine checkup. It's normal at my age. What did the doctor say? Jessica pressed. That I'm healthier than most men half my age. They exchanged a look. I could tell they didn't believe me. Dad, we really think you should take a break. Maybe even step back from the company. Like I said, the company won't run itself. You have Chris, Michael countered. He's a great COO. He could handle more responsibility. How do you know so much about Chris? Michael looked flustered. I made some inquiries after we last spoke. Why? Because we're worried, Jessica exclaimed. We want to help. I leaned back in my chair and looked from one to the other. Are you worried about my health, or are you worried about the company? You, of course, Michael said, looking offended. You're my father. Funny how that concern only surfaced now, after 15 years of you barely having time for a phone call. People change, Dad. I've matured. I realize family's what's important. How convenient that this realization came just as the company's valuation is at its peak. Jessica's face went pale. Are you accusing us of having ulterior motives? I'm just pointing out a coincidence. Michael stood up. You know what? I try to reach out and you turn it into an attack. You always do this. I didn't start anything, Michael. I just asked why you're suddenly so invested in my health and my business. Because we're family, he was almost shouting now. And because I can see you're not handling it anymore. The company is too big for one person, especially at your age. I've handled it for 30 years. I'll continue to handle it. Jessica put a hand on her husband's arm. Michael, calm down. We just wanted to offer our help. What kind of help? I asked. Are you planning to quit your job and learn the construction business? No, but I could help with the financial side, tax strategies, investment planning. Selling the company, I finished for him. He fell silent. If you did decide to sell, yes, I could help you get the best possible price. You already have buyers lined up? As a matter of fact, I do, Michael said, looking pleased with himself. Vanguard isn't the only player. There's Apex Capital and Western Builders. They might offer more. So that was it. He was already shopping the company around behind my back. Thank you for your concern, Michael, but I'll decide what to do with my company. Dad, don't be so stubborn. You always have to do everything your way without listening to anyone. It's my company. I built it. And what happens to it when you're gone? Or if something happens? Like what? Well, you get sick or something. I looked at him closely. There was no genuine care in his eyes, only calculation. Don't you worry about that. I have it all under control. Jessica changed her approach. John, we just want you to rest. See a good doctor. Take care of yourself. I take care of myself, Jessica. It's all I've ever done. They left a half hour later, clearly frustrated. As they walked to their car, I could hear them arguing about my stubbornness and the need to act faster. I closed the door and leaned against it. I was certain now. They were planning something, maybe trying to have me declared incompetent or just waiting for my health to fail so they could seize control. Either way, they were out of luck. In less than a week, the company would be gone, and the money would be where they could never find it. I smiled at the thought and went to the kitchen. I needed to eat. Tomorrow was a big day. I had to send the final documents to Robert and meet with a lawyer about setting up the trust. I wondered what Michael and Jessica would do when they learned they were too late, that the company was sold and the money was gone. Maybe then they'd finally show their true colors, and I would be ready. I walked out of the bank feeling a strange mix of satisfaction and exhaustion. The deal with Vanguard Holdings was done. $9 million, the sum total of 30 years of my life, was now sitting in an account nobody knew existed. The signing had taken nearly 3 hours, with Vanguard's lawyers scrutinizing every clause as if they feared I'd back out at the last second. Robert shook my hand once the formalities were over. "Are you sure you want to keep this quiet?" he asked. "We usually issue a press release right away." "I'm sure," I replied. "Just give me some time to handle a few personal matters." He nodded, though I could see the confusion in his eyes. Businessmen like us rarely hit a successful deal. We trumpeted it from the rooftops. But my situation was different. Sitting in my car, I felt a wave of weakness wash over me. The episodes had been getting more frequent lately. Dr. Evans had prescribed strong painkillers, but I tried to use them only when absolutely necessary. I couldn't afford to have a clouded mind until all my affairs were in order. The drive home took nearly an hour, the freeway clogged with afternoon traffic. By the time I pulled into my driveway, I could barely move. The pain in my gut was a searing, unbearable fire. I stumbled to the front door, fumbled with the lock, and all but collapsed onto the living room sofa. The bottle of pills was on the coffee table. I dry swallowed one with a gulp of water from the nearby carafe. The doctor had warned they would cause drowsiness, but right now, I didn't care. I just wanted the pain to stop. I don't know how long I drifted in that hazy state between sleep and consciousness. The pain slowly subsided, replaced by a heavy numbness. My mind floated, adrift in a sea of memories. My first pickup truck, the day Michael was born, Sarah's laugh, the groundbreaking for the new high-rise, 30 years of my life, a dizzying, blurred kaleidoscope. I was pulled back to awareness by the sound of voices. Someone was in the house. I tried to sit up, but my body felt like lead. The medication was still in full effect. The voices were coming from the kitchen. One was Michael's, the other Jessica's. I didn't remember giving them a key, but perhaps Michael still had a spare from years ago. "We can't wait any longer," Jessica said, her voice low but clear. "Did you see him?" "He can barely stand." "I know," Michael replied, "but we can't rush this. If we move too soon, he'll get suspicious and change the will." "What if we're too late? What if he sells the company before we can get the conservatorship papers filed?" Conservatorship. So that was their plan. "He won't," Michael said confidently. "I spoke to Chris this morning. There's no indication of a sale. All contracts are proceeding as normal. No meetings with potential buyers." So Chris was feeding Michael information. I wondered what my son was paying him for his loyalty. "But you said yourself Vanguard is interested again." "Interested, yes, but that's a long way from a deal. Apparently Dad isn't even returning their calls." If I had the strength, I would have laughed. Poor Michael. He had no idea he was a week too late. "Then we need to move forward with the medical evaluation," Jessica insisted. "I spoke with Dr. Phillips. He's willing to examine your father and provide an opinion stating he's mentally unfit." "Are you sure he'll go along with it?" "Dad seems sick, but his mind is still sharp." "Of course he will. For $5,000, he'll write whatever we need. And Judge Peterson is a friend of my father's. He'll sign off on the petition without asking too many questions." So that was their scheme. Have me declared incompetent to seize control of my assets. A classic maneuver. "And what happens after we get control?" Michael asked. "It's simple. As his legal guardian, you sell the company. My contact at Apex Capital is still very interested. They're prepared to offer $10 million. And Dad? What about him?" "He'll be in no position to object. We'll find him a nice room at the Golden Years Pavilion." A cheap nursing home on the edge of town. Ezra sounded unsure. "Exactly. Why waste money on some luxury facility? In his condition, he won't know the difference. The important thing is that he has basic medical supervision. We can use the savings for our own plans." I lay there, paralyzed, less by the drug and more by what I was hearing. My own son and his wife were plotting to strip me of my freedom, sell my life's work, and ship me off to a cut-rate nursing home to die, all while being completely oblivious to the fact that I was already dying. "I don't know, Jessica," Michael hesitated. "Maybe we should find a better place. He's still my father." "A father who never supported you," she countered, "who thought your career wasn't good enough for a real man, who skipped our wedding for a business meeting." "I was at your wedding," I wanted to scream. I sat in the third row and watched you exchange your vows, and I postponed that meeting, which cost me a major contract. But of course, I couldn't speak. I could only lie there as Jessica continued to manipulate my son. He never thought about you, Michael. He only ever cared about his company. Now it's our turn to think about ourselves. With $10 million, we can buy that house in Laguna Beach you've always wanted. We can travel the world, maybe even start a family. We're already comfortable, Michael argued weakly. And you said you didn't want kids. You were worried about your figure. That was just an example, darling. I'm talking about the freedom that kind of money provides. There was a pause. I could almost feel Michael's internal struggle, his conscience warring with his greed. When do you want to do this? He finally asked. Immediately. I've already had the paperwork drawn up. We just need Dr. Phillips' signature and your testimony in court. What if Dad fights it? He can't. The moment the judge signs the order, it's legally binding. The police can even enforce it if necessary. You think it will come to that? I hope not. But we have to be prepared for anything. You know how stubborn he is. Another pause and then Michael's voice, quiet and hesitant. What if he's really sick? I mean, what if something is seriously wrong? All the more reason to act quickly, Jessica said smoothly, before he does something foolish with the will or the company. You're right. I always am. I heard the sound of a kiss, then their footsteps approaching. Let's check on him, Jessica said. His car's here, so he must be home. I squeezed my eyes shut, feigning deep sleep. I heard them enter the living room. Look, Jessica whispered, he's passed out. No, just sleeping, Michael replied. You can see his chest moving. I felt one of them lean over me. The cloying scent of Jessica's vanilla perfume filled my nostrils. What are these pills? She asked. I don't know, some kind of medication. Check the label. A pause. It's a strong painkiller, prescription from Dr. Evans, filled 2 days ago. See? I told you he was sick. We have to move fast. Yeah, you're right. Their footsteps receded. I heard the front door close, followed by the sound of a car engine starting. When the noise finally faded, I opened my eyes and slowly pushed myself up. My head was spinning, but the effects of the painkiller were beginning to wear off. So that was their plan. Steal my freedom, sell my company, and leave me to rot in a cheap nursing home. All under the guise of concern. I stood, staggered to the kitchen, and drank a glass of water, trying to clear my head. A piece of paper lay on the counter. They must have forgotten it in their hurry. I picked it up. It was a draft of a court petition to have me declared incompetent on the grounds of progressive dementia. It cited erratic business decisions, forgetfulness, and inappropriate behavior as evidence. It was all a fabrication, of course, but with a paid-off doctor and a corrupt judge, it could actually work. Fortunately for me, they were too late. The company was sold. The money was secure. And I had a meeting with my lawyer tomorrow to finalize the trust and a new will. But now, I knew I had to act even faster. I picked up the phone and dialed Linda's number. Mr. Miller? Her voice was filled with concern. Is everything okay? Yes, Linda, I just need you to do something for me. I won't be in the office tomorrow. If my son calls, tell him I'm out of town on business for a few days. Of course, Mr. Miller. Anything else? Yes, take down this number. I gave her my lawyer's contact information. If anything happens, you call that number immediately. What could happen? I could hear the anxiety in her voice. It's just a precaution. After hanging up, I sat at my computer and researched the legal process for conservatorship. I needed to know what I was up against. It was a complex process that normally took weeks, but with a crooked doctor and judge, it could be fast-tracked. I had no doubt Jessica would pull every string she could. The phone rang. It was Michael. I decided to answer, just to see how far they would push their charade. Hello? Dad? His voice was dripping with false cheerfulness. How are you feeling? Jessica and I stopped by, but you were sound asleep. We didn't want to wake you. I took something for a headache. Made me drowsy. A headache? Have you been getting those often? Sometimes, it's nothing. Maybe you should see a doctor. Jessica knows a very good specialist. I was sure it was the same Dr. Phillips who would diagnose me with anything for $5,000. Thanks, but I have my own doctor. Of course, just a suggestion. A pause. I could almost hear him choosing his words. Dad, Jessica and I were thinking, maybe you should take a real vacation, get away for a while. We could help with the company while you're gone. That won't be necessary. I have everything under control. But you look so tired and with the headaches. Michael, I interrupted, I appreciate the concern, I really do, but I'm fine. If I need your help, I'll ask for it. Okay, Dad, whatever you say. Another pause. Jessica and I wanted to have you over for dinner on Friday. I'm busy Friday. Busy with what? He couldn't hide his frustration. A business meeting. On a Friday night? Business doesn't stop for the weekend, Michael. You should know that. He sighed. Of course, Dad. Well, some other time then. We said our goodbyes. They were clearly rushing their plan into motion. The dinner was probably a setup, a chance for their pet doctor to casually assess my condition. The pain started to return, sharper this time. I had to take another pill. As I sat on the sofa, waiting for the medicine to work, I reflected on how quickly my world had turned upside down. A month ago, I was a healthy man, the proud owner of a thriving business with plans for the future. Now, I was terminally ill. I'd sold my life's work, and my only son was plotting to steal my freedom. But in this bleak new reality, I had one advantage. I knew their plan, and they had no idea about mine. I had sold the company before they could make their move. Now, all I had to do was protect the money and what little time I had left. Tomorrow, I would meet my lawyer and draft a new will. Michael and Jessica wouldn't get a dime. I would set up a trust to manage the funds exactly as I wished, and then I would decide how and when to let them know they had lost. Maybe I would wait for them to make their move, just to watch them fail. The medication began to take hold. The pain receded, and my thoughts grew fuzzy. But before I drifted off, one clear thought remained. It was a good thing I hadn't told them about the sale. It was the one right move in a long series of mistakes. The morning started with another searing wave of pain. I forced myself out of bed, swallowed a pill, and stood under a hot shower for a long time, letting the water wash over me as I gathered my thoughts. Today was the day I would protect my assets from Michael and Jessica. After what I'd overheard, there was no doubt left in my mind. They saw me as nothing more than a bank account. The law firm of Wallace, Stone, and Finch was located in downtown Phoenix, just a few blocks from the Vanguard building. I had intentionally chosen a firm I had no prior connection with. I didn't want Michael sniffing around and finding them through mutual contacts. Arthur Wallace was a man in his 60s with sharp eyes and a neatly trimmed gray beard. His office was paneled in dark wood and furnished with leather, a classic confidence-inspiring style. Mr. Miller, he said, shaking my hand. Please, have a seat. How can I help you? I sank into a deep leather armchair. I need to rewrite my will and establish a trust, and I need it done immediately. Wallace nodded, unfazed. Of course. But first, I need to ask you a few standard questions. Go ahead. Are you acting of your own free will? No one is coercing you. Completely of my own free will. Do you fully understand the nature and consequences of these actions? I do. Are there any medical conditions that might impair your ability to make sound decisions? I hesitated. Telling him about the cancer could complicate things if Michael tried to contest the will, but without the full picture, Wallace couldn't properly protect my interests. I've been diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer, I said evenly, but I'm of sound mind and clear judgment. His expression softened. I'm very sorry to hear that, Mr. Miller. That does complicate matters. Your family could try to argue that the illness affected your judgment. That's why I'm here. My son and his wife are planning to have me declared incompetent to gain control of my assets. I overheard them discussing their plan. I explained everything, the conservatorship, the paid-off doctor, the crooked judge. Wallace listened intently, taking meticulous notes. "This is a serious situation," he said when I finished, "but not an insurmountable one. First, we need an independent medical evaluation of your competency. I can refer you to several respected psychiatrists who can conduct an assessment today." "How urgent is it?" "Extremely. If your son has already filed the petition, we have very little time." "Then let's do it. What's next?" "We need to create an ironclad, irrevocable trust. This will shield your assets even if a court were to grant the conservatorship. The key will be appointing a reliable trustee." That was the problem. Who could I trust? "Could I appoint you?" "Certainly, it's common practice. However, I would recommend a co-trustee for added security." "I don't have any close friends or family I can rely on." Wallace nodded. "In that case, we can appoint my partner, Susan Stone. She specializes in these types of complex estate cases." "All right. And the will?" "That part is simpler. You can bequeath your assets to whomever you wish." "I've thought about it. I want to use a portion to create a scholarship fund for underprivileged students pursuing degrees in engineering and construction management. The rest, I want to donate to pancreatic cancer research." "No personal beneficiaries?" "None. And I want it explicitly stated that my son, Michael Miller, and his wife, Jessica Miller, are to be excluded from inheriting anything." Wallace made a note. "Understood. Now, regarding the assets, what, specifically, are we protecting?" $9 million in an account at Desert Ridge Bank. It's the proceeds from the sale of my construction company." "The sale?" Wallace raised an eyebrow. "I was under the impression you still owned the company." "I sold it a week ago to Vanguard Holdings. My son is unaware." "I see. That simplifies things considerably. Is the money already in your account?" "Yes." "Excellent. We will establish the trust and transfer the funds into it immediately. Once the money is in the trust, neither your son nor any court can touch it. As the beneficiary, you will have access to the funds as needed." "How quickly can this be done?" "I can have the documents drafted by tomorrow morning. If we can get the psychiatric evaluation done today, we can close every legal loophole." "What should I expect from my son when he finds out?" Wallace considered this for a moment. "He will likely challenge the trust and the will in court, claiming you were incompetent or under undue influence. But if we do our job correctly, he won't have a leg to stand on." "And if he succeeds in having me declared incompetent?" "Even then, the trust protects your assets. You would lose control over the disbursements, but the money would be safe. Upon your death, it would be distributed according to your wishes." I nodded. It was a solid plan. "Do it, and bill me personally. I don't want any paper trail leading back to the company." "Of course, Mr. Miller. One last thing. I strongly advise you to relocate temporarily. If your son is serious about this, he may try to restrict your movements." "I hadn't thought of that." "Where would I go?" "We have clients who provide secure, confidential housing for situations just like this." It sounded like something out of a witness protection program. Wallace smiled faintly. "In a way, it is. The wealthy face a unique set of problems. This is simply the industry's response." After leaving Wallace's office, I went to the clinic he recommended. Dr. Bennett, an elderly psychiatrist with kind eyes, conducted a thorough evaluation of my mental state, a series of tests, questions, and exercises in logic and memory. After 2 hours, he delivered his conclusion. "Mr. Miller, you are entirely competent. I see no signs of dementia or any other cognitive impairment. Your reasoning is sharp and your memory is excellent for your age." "Thank you, doctor. I'll need that in writing." "Of course. The report will be ready within the hour. I'll send a copy directly to your attorney." I returned home that evening feeling a sense of relief, despite the fatigue and the dull, persistent pain. The plan was in motion. By tomorrow the money would be in the trust, the will would be rewritten, and there would be nothing Michael and Jessica could do. I turned on the TV and made a simple sandwich for dinner, washing it down with a glass of bourbon. My appetite had all but vanished lately, another symptom Dr. Evans had warned me about. The phone rang. It was Jessica. "John, good evening." Her voice was sickly sweet. "How are you feeling?" "Fine, Jessica. What can I do for you?" Michael and I are just so worried. You canceled on us for Friday, and we were thinking, maybe you just don't feel up to going out. We could come over to your place. That won't be necessary. I have a very important meeting. At the office on a Friday night? Not exactly. A private meeting. Oh? She sounded intrigued. With whom, may I ask? I'm afraid that's confidential. A pause. John, Michael and I have noticed you've been acting differently lately. You're more withdrawn and you're taking that medication. We just want to be sure you're all right. I'm fine, Jessica, but I appreciate your concern. Perhaps you should see a doctor. I know a wonderful specialist. I have my own doctor, and he tells me I'm in great shape for my age. Of course, she said, her tone unconvinced. Well, just know we're always here for you. I appreciate that. So we'll see you Saturday, perhaps? Maybe. I'll call you if I'm free. I hung up and smirked. They were getting desperate. I wondered if they'd already filed the court petition or if they were still waiting on their crooked doctor's report. The next morning, I met with Wallace again. He had all the documents prepared, the trust agreement, the new will, and a durable power of attorney. It's all ready, Mr. Miller. We just need your signature to transfer the funds. I reviewed the documents carefully. Everything was as we had discussed. An irrevocable trust, shielded from creditors and legal challenges. I was the lifetime beneficiary, and upon my death, the funds would be distributed as I wished, with Wallace and his partner, Susan Stone, as trustees. I signed every document. Good. Now we just need to go to the bank. At Desert Ridge Bank, we were greeted by the same manager who had opened my account. Mr. Miller, good to see you. What can we do for you today? I need to transfer funds into a trust. The process took about an hour. The manager verified the paperwork. We filled out the necessary forms, and finally, the transfer was complete. $9 million was now safely out of Michael and Jessica's reach. Congratulations, Mr. Miller, Wallace said as we left the bank. Your assets are secure. What now? Now, we wait. We see how your son proceeds. If he files the petition, we will be ready. What about the company? I'm still the official owner, even though it's sold. That's not an issue. Vanguard will make their public announcement soon. Until then, just act as you normally would. How long do I have to keep up the charade? Not long. From what you've told me, your son and his wife are moving quickly. I expect this will all come to a head within a week or two. He was right. The very next day, when I arrived at the office, Linda greeted me with a worried expression. Mr. Miller, your son called. He said it was urgent. What did he want? He said he had important news about the company and that you needed to contact him immediately. I chuckled. Thank you, Linda. I'll call him when I have a moment. In my office, Chris was waiting with another report. He looked tense. Mr. Miller, there's something you should know. Go on. Your son called me yesterday. He was asking about the company's financials, wanted to know if there were any signs of an impending sale. So Michael was still digging for information. And what did you tell him? The truth, that I wasn't aware of any plans to sell. But he was very persistent. He said it was in your best interest. My best interest? I raised an eyebrow. An interesting choice of words. He said that you were unwell, Chris hesitated, and that you needed help making major decisions. And you believed him? No, sir. That's why I'm telling you this. It all felt very strange. Thank you for your honesty, Chris. I appreciate it. After he left, I called Michael. Dad, finally. I've been trying to reach you all day. I was in meetings. What's so urgent? We need to talk. In person. It's about the company. What about it? Not on the phone. When can we meet? I'm busy this week. Dad, this is serious. I have it on good authority that Vanguard Holdings is about to publicly announce their acquisition of your company. Is it true? So the leak had happened. Either someone at Vanguard talked or Michael had his own sources. I don't know what you're talking about. Dad, please, don't play games with me. I'm trying to help you. Help me with what exactly? Protecting your interests. If you really sold the company, we need to discuss how to manage the money, investments, tax planning. It sounded like he already considered the money his. A long pause. Of course not. It's your money. I just want to help. If I need help, I'll hire a professional. I am a professional, Dad. I've been in finance for 10 years. And in 10 years, you've never once shown any interest in my finances. Why the sudden concern now? You're being unfair. I've always cared about you. Have you? What's my birthday? Silence. Then, a hesitant guess. November 3rd? October 7th, but thanks for trying. Dad, that's a cheap shot. Forgetting a date doesn't mean I don't care. Michael, I don't have time for this. If Vanguard has an announcement to make, you'll hear about it with the rest of the world. So it's true. You sold the company? I don't comment on market rumors. Dad, please, we're family. We should be in this together. Family? Since when? For the last 15 years, you've managed to visit 3 times a year. Thanksgiving, Christmas, and my birthday, which you can't even remember. People change. I've changed. I have to go. I have another meeting. I hung up feeling a strange mix of anger and satisfaction. For the first time in years, I'd spoken to my son with complete honesty, without trying to pretend our relationship was anything other than what it was. It was liberating. That evening, I received a text from Wallace. His source at the courthouse confirmed that Michael had filed the petition to have me declared incompetent. The hearing was set for next week. We had only a few days to prepare. I decided it was time to move to the safe house Wallace had arranged. I packed a small bag, clothes, medication, important documents, and left without a note. Let Michael wonder where I'd gone. The safe house was a comfortable home in a quiet suburb, owned by one of Wallace's clients who traveled frequently. It had a state-of-the-art security system and complete privacy. Here, I could wait for the final act to play out. Over the next few days, Michael and Jessica bombarded my phone with calls and texts. I ignored them all. Wallace informed me that they had even filed a missing person report. The police contacted my lawyer, who assured them I was safe and had left of my own accord. And then, the news broke. Vanguard Holdings issued a press release officially announcing its acquisition of Miller Construction for $9 million. The deal, they stated, had been finalized 2 weeks prior. My phone exploded with calls from journalists, business associates, employees, and of course, Michael. I decided to answer his call. Dad, is it true? You actually sold the company? Yes, Michael, I did. Why didn't you tell me? I'm your son. That's precisely why I didn't tell you. What? What are you talking about? I know about your plan, Michael. I know you and Jessica were going to have me declared incompetent, stick me in a cheap nursing home, and take control of my money. A stunned silence. Then, that's not true. Who told you that? Nobody told me. I heard you myself. In the kitchen, the night you thought I was asleep on the sofa. Dad, you misunderstood. We never... No more lies, Michael. I know everything, including the petition you filed with the court. Another pause. It was for your own good. You're sick, Dad. You need help. The only help I need is for you to leave me alone. You're not getting a penny from the sale. The money is in a trust, untouchable by you or any court. What? You can't do that? I already have, and I've rewritten the will. You and Jessica are disinherited. Dad, please, let's just meet. We can talk this out. It's too late for talk, Michael. You made your choice. I've made mine. Where are you? I'll come to you. We can fix this. No, there's nothing to fix. I'll see you in court. I ended the call and switched off my phone. A profound sense of freedom washed over me. For the first time in a long time, I felt truly unburdened by the company, by the pretense of family. The $9 million in the trust gave me the power to live my remaining months exactly as I wanted. No compromises, no lies. The disease was advancing. The bouts of pain were more frequent, more intense. But now I had my freedom, and I intended to use every last second of it. The court hearing took place 8 days after the sale was announced. Michael arrived with 2 lawyers and Dr. Phillips, the specialist Jessica had found. I came with Wallace and the independent psychiatrist, Dr. Bennett. The case was heard not by Judge Peterson, the friend of Jessica's father, but by Judge Davis, an older woman with a sharp gaze and a reputation for being incorruptible. A Apparently, Peterson had recused himself once he learned I had retained one of the top law firms in the state. The hearing was brief, and for Michael, deeply humiliating. Wallace presented Dr. Bennett's report, which confirmed my full mental competency. He then informed the court about the irrevocable trust and the new will. "Your Honor," Wallace stated, "not only is my client fully competent, but he took proactive steps to secure his assets long before his son filed this baseless petition. Mr. Miller was aware that his son, after showing no interest in his life for 15 years, suddenly developed a deep concern for his finances immediately following rumors of the company's sale. Michael sat rigid, his face a stone mask, but I could see his hands trembling. Jessica, seated beside him, was pale. When it was their turn, Michael's lawyers tried to paint me as a sick, confused old man. Dr. Phillips read from a report detailing my supposed progressive cognitive decline and paranoid tendencies. "My father is refusing medical help," Michael testified. "He's become suspicious and withdrawn, accusing my wife and me of things we never did. We're just trying to help him." Judge Davis listened patiently to both sides, then called for a recess. 30 minutes later, she returned. "I have reviewed all the evidence and listened to the arguments," she announced. "Based on the medical reports and my own observations of Mr. Miller, I find no grounds to declare him incompetent. The petition filed by Mr. Michael Miller is denied." Michael shot to his feet. "Your Honor, this is a mistake. My father is seriously ill." "Mr. Miller, sit down," the judge ordered sternly. "If you acquire new evidence of your father's incapacity, you are free to file another petition. For now, this matter is closed." As we left the courtroom, Michael rushed to catch up with me. "Dad, wait, we need to talk." I stopped and turned to face him. "About what, Michael? About how you tried to strip me of my rights?" "That's not what happened. We were genuinely trying to help. By shipping me off to a cheap nursing home, by seizing control of my money, is that your idea of help?" Jessica joined us, her eyes glistening with what I presumed were crocodile tears. "John, please. You've misunderstood everything. We never talked about a cheap nursing home. We were just exploring options in case you needed care." "I heard you, Jessica. Verbatim. Golden Years Pavilion. Why waste money on a luxury facility? In his condition, he won't know the difference." She went even paler. I didn't mean it like that." "Of course you didn't," I sneered. "You never do." Wallace gently touched my arm. "Mr. Miller, we should go. The car's waiting." "Right." Michael grabbed my hand. "Oh, Dad, please. Let's just talk. Not here. Come over for dinner Friday night. Just you and me. Without Jessica, if you want." I considered it. Why not? It was a chance to finally put everything on the table. "All right. 7 o'clock. Your house." "Thanks, Dad. You won't regret it." "We'll see about that." On Friday evening, I drove to Michael's house in a wealthy Phoenix suburb. It was a large, colonial-style mansion, the fruit of a successful career in finance in a high-end art gallery, or perhaps the fruit of anticipating a massive inheritance. Michael answered the door himself. He was dressed down in a simple shirt and jeans, a departure from his usual suits. "Dad, come in. I'm glad you came." I stepped into the grand foyer. The house was impeccably decorated, no doubt Jessica's doing. "Jessica's not here?" I asked. "No, like you wanted. Just us." We went into the dining room where a table was set for two, complete with candles. A bottle of my favorite bourbon stood in the center. "Please sit," Michael said, gesturing to a chair. "I grilled some steaks. I remember you always liked a good steak." I sat down, wary of this sudden display of thoughtfulness. Was he genuinely trying to make amends, or was this just another performance? Michael poured us both a bourbon. "What should we drink to?" he asked. "To the truth." He nodded, though a flicker of unease crossed his face. "To the truth." We drank. The bourbon was excellent, expensive and smooth. "Dad, I want to apologize," Michael began, "for everything. The court case, the accusations. I honestly thought I was doing the right thing." "Right for whom, Michael? For me or for you?" He looked down. "I was worried about you. You were acting strangely, taking those pills, and then you sold the company without a word to anyone. Why should I have told you? You never cared about the company. That's not true. I was always proud of what you built. Proud, but you didn't even know how many active sites we had. Michael sighed. I know I haven't been a good son. After Mom died, I pulled away. It was hard for me. It was hard for me too, Michael. I lost my wife, but I didn't turn my back on you. No, you just tried to turn me into a carbon copy of yourself. You never respected my choices or my interests. It was an old, tired argument. We had been down this road 100 times. I wanted you to be part of what I created. I wanted you to have a legacy. But you chose a different life, and I accepted that. You did? You didn't speak to me for a year after I told you I wasn't going to work for you. That's not true. I was disappointed, yes, but I never cut you off. Michael shook his head. It doesn't matter. That's in the past. I want to talk about now. Fine. Let's talk about now. Let's talk about you and Jessica planning to put me in a nursing home. Dad, I swear I never would have agreed to that place. Yes, Jessica mentioned it, but I told her we would find somewhere better. But the idea of putting me in a home at all, you were on board with that. He was silent. Yes, because I thought you were sick and needed professional care. I didn't know it was cancer. And now you do? Wallace mentioned it in court, stage 4. Why didn't you tell me? Would you have believed me? Or would you have thought it was just another symptom of my paranoia? Michael lowered his head. I would have believed you, and I would have helped. You're my father, damn it. Funny you're only remembering that now that the company is sold and the money is out of your reach. It's not about the money, isn't it? What were you and Jessica talking about in the kitchen? The house in Laguna Beach? The world travels? How you were going to manage my millions? Michael shot to his feet. That was Jessica. She's the one obsessed with money and status and all that. And you just went along with it. I was weak, he admitted, but I never wanted to hurt you. I looked at my son, a grown man who suddenly looked like a lost little boy. Maybe there was a sliver of truth in his words. Maybe Jessica was the primary driver of their scheme, but that didn't absolve Michael of his part in it. I believe you didn't intend to hurt me, I said finally, but you let it happen. You betrayed me, Michael, and it's not the first time. What do you mean? He paled. Remember when you were 22, the money you took from my safe to pay off a gambling debt? You knew? Of course I knew. I always knew exactly how much was in there. $12,000 gone overnight. Why didn't you ever say anything? I was waiting for you to tell me, or at least pay it back. You did neither. Michael sank back into his chair. His shoulders slumped. I was an idiot. I still am. Not an idiot, just weak. We sat in silence for a long time. I took another sip of bourbon, the warmth spreading through my chest, a pleasant feeling that was becoming increasingly rare. So what happens now? Michael finally asked. Now, I tell you the whole truth. I took a deep breath. I have stage 4 pancreatic cancer. It's in my liver and my lungs. The doctors gave me 6 to 8 months. It might be less. The disease is progressing faster than they thought. Michael looked ashen. What about treatment? There's no point. The odds are slim to none, and the side effects would make my remaining time a living hell. Dad, I had no idea. I got the diagnosis the day before you and Jessica showed up with your sudden concern. A hell of a coincidence, isn't it? It really was a coincidence. Jessica heard from a client that Vanguard was looking at your company. We thought we should help you with the sale. Help me or help yourselves? He didn't answer. The company sold for $9 million, I continued. The money is in a trust managed by my lawyers. I have access to it while I'm alive. When I die, it goes to the scholarship fund and to cancer research. You didn't leave us anything? Why would I? For 15 years of neglect, for trying to have me committed. I'm your son. In name only, Michael. In name only. He stood and walked to the window, his back to me. His shoulders were shaking. I couldn't tell if it was from anger or sorrow. What are you going to do now? He asked, his voice muffled. Live. For what little time I have left. I bought a round-the-world ticket. I always wanted to see the world, but I never had the time. Now I have the time and the money. When do you leave? Tomorrow, starting with Japan, then on to China, India, Europe. Alone? Yes, it's better that way. Michael finally turned around. His eyes were red. I could come with you. For part of it. I shook my head. No, Michael. This is a journey I have to take by myself. So you're not going to forgive me? Not even now? I thought about it. Forgive him? After everything? The betrayal, the lies, the attempt to steal my freedom? I don't hold a grudge, Michael. I truly don't. But there's nothing to forgive. You made your choices. I made mine. We're just two people going in different directions. That's it? After 15 years of this Cold War, you're just leaving? What did you expect? A tearful reunion? A hug? We haven't been a real family for a very long time. There's no sense in pretending now. Michael stepped closer. I'm not pretending. I really am sorry for how things turned out between us. Me too, Michael. Believe me, me too. We stood there, looking at each other, two strangers connected only by blood and a bitter history. The steaks are getting cold, he said finally. I'm not hungry. The medication kills my appetite. Another bourbon at least? I can do that. He poured us each another glass. We drank in silence, not toasting anything in particular, but simply because it would likely be the last time we ever sat like this. If you change your mind about the will, Michael started. I held up a hand, cutting him off. Don't spoil the moment, Michael. He nodded. Sorry. I finished my drink and stood up. I should go. I have an early flight. Will you let me know where you are? In case, Wallace will know. He'll contact you if necessary. Michael walked me to the door. For the first time in years, he hugged me, a clumsy, awkward embrace. Goodbye, Dad. I'm sorry for everything. Goodbye, Michael. Take care of yourself. I stepped out into the warm, clear night. The stars were bright in the desert sky. I took a deep breath, feeling strangely light. Everything had been said. All the masks were off. No more obligations, no more expectations. Just me and the road ahead. As I got into my car, I glanced back at the house. Michael was still standing in the doorway watching me go. I gave a small wave and started the engine. A new day was dawning, and with it, a new life. It would be a short one, but it would finally, truly be my own. I pulled out onto the street and didn't look back. Some things can't be fixed. Some wounds never heal. Sometimes the only thing you can do is move forward. At sunrise, I was on a plane to Tokyo. My final journey had begun. A journey toward freedom, toward a kind of peace. No company, no family drama, no lies. Just me, my memories, and the time I had left, slipping away like sand through my fingers. But now, every single grain mattered. Every moment was mine.